was, because she could see it reflected back at her in the polished surface of the table. And any second now he was going to look back and notice it, her blazing cheeks, like a sign that said, "I am never in a million years going to be able to do this." Even though she absolutely knew she could. She was a good writer, damn it, and great at getting things out of people. You just have to find that way in. That little whatever it is that someone loves and responds to, she'd said to Greg, when Greg had suggested that she might not be up to the task. Then she'd seen it on Greg's face, that hint of belief, mixed with the initial doubt from when her agent had gotten in touch with him about this project. It was so infuriating that her cheeks were betraying her. And now Alfie was looking back, and he could see it, and this weird expression just broke all over his face. Like anger, only a slightly different variety that she wasn't quite familiar with. Which made sense when she really thought about it, because Alfie Harding was so furious all the time he'd probably unearthed layers of emotion that nobody else had ever even heard of. He practically had a PhD in being really annoyed. This was just his latest find. Baffled contempt. Or maybe amazed disgust. She couldn't tell for sure. And before she was able to decipher it, Greg stepped in. "Now, I know we've had some missteps, and that you're very wary of working with a particular type of person," he started. And honestly, in any other circumstance, Mabel would have felt relieved. She would have thought this was definitely the way to go. Do a bit of schmoozing, get them to come around to your point of view. But with a man like Alfie Harding... No, Mabel thought. Abort, abort, abort. And when Alfie suddenly snapped to attention, she knew she was right. Then braced herself for the coming storm. The 10-inch deep frown between his black-as-pitch eyebrows. That jaw suddenly clenched so tight you could see every muscle through his stark as a January sky skin. And finally, that voice, that somewhere just past Manchester voice, familiar to her not only from his numerous surly TV appearances, and that time he'd tried his hand at an acting career, but from her own home, from the places she'd grown up, from all the pubs and parks teeming with a million men like him. Because she'd wanted to believe he might be different, but of course he wasn't at all. "What do you mean by that exactly? Are you trying to say something about me?" he'd barked out, and of course Mabel knew why. Blokes like that always hated being thought of as scared. They never wanted to be wimps in anybody's eyes, and certainly not in the eyes of some shiny editor, or some blushing fool of a writer. It was obvious, and so much so that Greg clearly knew it now too. Mabel glanced at him and saw the ripple of realisation and discomfort cross his usually never anything but calm, pristine, Patrick Bateman-looking face before he managed to rein it in and smoothly change course. "Oh no, not about you," he said. "I was simply commenting on the process itself. It can be so difficult." And then he gave a little laugh, threaded his fingers together in a way that seemed to say, "If we were shaking hands right now, you would absolutely love it." But unfortunately for both of them, Alfie wasn't having it. He folded his arms across his chest, like a barricade between him and the two chances in front of him. "Didn't seem like that's what you were saying," he said. "Oh, well, then let me apologise." "Yeah, but for what, though?" He tilted his head when he asked the question. Like a cat, Mabel thought, playing with a mouse. Even though Greg was the least mouse-like person she'd ever known. He could silence whole meetings with a look. Almost the whole of Harchester Publishing quaked in his wake. His suits cost more than she paid a month in rent. His licence plate declared to the world that he was a boss, with an 8 where the O was supposed to go. Yet to her astonishment, for a second he did actually look cowed. He seemed to be sweating slightly, and his eyes kept darting to the expensive water someone had laid out on the table, like his mouth had gone dry, and if he could just wet it a little, he could come up with a good explanation for what he meant. Even though it should have been easy. Just tell him he's a big, strong boy and we'll move on, she thought at him, but he simply couldn't seem to do it. And now Alfie was starting to look amused, smug almost, it seemed to her, in a way that was just as familiar as his accent and his anger and his overblown macho pride. Give it a second, and he'd be sneering at her the way he was sneering at Greg, like every boy she'd ever known from high school, or played with in caravan parks on the East Coast, or been in...